Dear members and friends of Wallingford Presbyterian Church, by now you should have received a letter from the church session informing you of the progress on the proposed electronic sign and accompanying electronic reader. In case you didn't, I wanted to take this opportunity to share it with you and also to make a few personal comments. The letter begins, "Dear members and friends, over 5 years ago, the session appointed a committee to address the need for up-to-date signage that would communicate events and activities and blend in with the style and beauty of our building and landscaping. The handmade temporary signs we use are out of character and ineffective, as they can only convey one message at a time and cannot be read by passing motorists. Even with this signage, there have been times when there were as many as 3 or 4 recycled signs on the lawn. As a busy church, many activities and events are communicated only to those who seek out the information on our website or our Facebook page. Those of you who attended the meetings we held 5 years ago to introduce the sign and electronic reader proposal and answer any of your questions as well as consider your concerns may remember that I confessed to you at the time that I was not originally in favor of the sign, but that in time, as the committee continued its work, I began to see the need for the sign in order for our church to stay connected to our larger community, beyond the walls of the church. The sign, I find, it was necessary for us to communicate our mission, our purpose, and care in a culture that is increasingly reliant on technology. The current pandemic has served to make that abundantly clear to me and to so many others. Our message of hope and love and grace needs to be shared in an increasingly anxious and divided nation and world. The proposed sign with its accompanying reader is actually a safer way to convey information to motorists driving by than the hand-painted signs. Large white letters on a black background that do not flash or scroll are easier to read at a glance and thus safer. And how do we know that? Well, as they say these days, we followed the science. And honestly, at times, as the letter states, we had 3 or 4 signs on the lawn at the same time. Though quaint in their 1950s appearance, they were not helpful in effectively communicating with our community. We are a busy church, busy with many programs and opportunities, not only for church members, but for our community as well, such as the Strawberry Festival, Trunk or Treat, Easter Extravaganza, Shred and Fed, Blood Drive, the Red Wagon Ministry to feed the hungry, the Giving Tree, the Christ Market, and Rise Against Hunger. And then there are our educational programs addressing racial inequality, prison reform, refugee resettlement, and a myriad of other topics relevant to life in our time. In addition, our campus is used by countless community support groups and organizations. We're home for BSA troops and Girl Scout troops. And Boy Scout Troop 277 was started here at our church in 1943. And we are the sponsoring organization for one of the first BSA girl troops in Delaware County. And of course, the amazing and wonderful Wallingford Presbyterian Church Cooperative Nursery School. which was started over 60 years ago by the church to serve the families in our community. People sometimes forget that the co-op is a part of our church. They are not an independent entity. And if there is no Wallingford Presbyterian Church, there is no Wallingford Cooperative Nursery School. The letter continues, our church is moving forward with a process to install an updated sign with an accompanying LED electronic reader. Our request for a zoning variance presented to the Township Zoning Hearing Board was denied, and we have obtained outside counsel to appeal the denial to the Board of Commissioners through the Court of Common Pleas. I will confess to you that we were a bit surprised by this. When we first approached the zoning board in 2016 with preliminary plans, we got little pushback. And you should know that when we approached the neighbors in direct line of sight with the proposed sign, none objected. The objections came from others in the neighborhood. The letter continues. The design has kept the aesthetics, architecture, and grounds at the forefront of the planning process. The sign and reader will be congruent with the ethos of our church. The reader provides messaging in white letters on a black field, with some possible seasonal coloring, for example, at Christmas. It has no moving or animated displays, no glare, shining, or flashing, and it will dim and be turned off at 10 p.m. Now, let me repeat that. It has no moving or animated displays, no glare, shining, or flashing, and it will dim and be turned off at 10 p.m. You may have seen other signs with electronic readers that do have glare and animation, etc., but that is not what we are proposing. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let me make this a lot less wordy by showing you a few pictures. It's pretty obvious that throughout the various building expansions over the years, our congregation has taken great care in making sure that it all looked congruent. Indeed, one would be hard-pressed to discern where one building expansion ends and another starts. It appears as though the current structure was all built at the same time. Well, the same care and attention to detail is evident in the proposed sign and reader. Throughout the years, the church had to adapt and embrace the necessary changes that led from a corner fireplace in the chapel for heat to a modern furnace, from gas lamps to illumine the sanctuary to electricity, from letters to emails, from landline telephone service to computers and the cloud, from telephone trees to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All necessary as the church kept up with the times. Back to the letter. Jesus charges us individually and collectively to be the light of the world, to not put our light under a bushel basket, but to put it on a lampstand and let it shine before others so they may see our good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. That's according to the Gospel of Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 and through 16. The COVID-19 pandemic has made it clear to the session that we need to avail ourselves of every form of communication in order to be a light for the gospel of Jesus Christ in our community. The sign has been funded by private donations from members, plus $5,000 from existing funds. No Vision 250 funds were used to pay for the sign. If you wish to contribute in order to defray the use of the funds, your donation will be accepted gratefully. Friends, the intent of the sign is to help us better serve our community and neighborhood. There's a plaque in one of our stairwells in reference to a building addition in 1954 that reads in part, "Dedicated to the glory of God and the service of this community." Our congregation has been a part of this community since 1885, and the chapel has been on the corner of Avondale and Brookhaven since 1889. It welcomed new neighbors and the building of neighborhoods to Wallingford. It sent its members to fight in wars and prayed for their safe return. It opened its arms to those in need and welcomed the poor and the stranger. Throughout, this church has been a good neighbor to those who came to Wallingford to call it home. The letter continues. There will be a presentation to the congregation and neighbors so that all can see the functions, features, and appearance of the sign. In addition, renderings of the present sign and a new sign are included with this letter. This sign, with its accompanying electronic reader, may not have been a direction that every single one of our members would have chosen as we move forward into this ever-increasing digital age of ours. But the session is resolute that this was the right decision to make at this time for the future of our beloved Wallingford Church. We ask for your prayers and support as we move forward in Christ's service for the session, and the letter is signed by me and by our clerk of session. Friends, a little more than 7 years ago now, you called me to be your pastor. I accepted that call because I saw in you a love for God and a dedication to serve our community. I love this church, and I wanted to have a good and long life in the service of the gospel of Jesus Christ and the community in which we are planted. I believe the sign is one more way at our disposal, one more tool we can use to do just that. Thank you for your continued prayers and your support. Blessings.